Okay. Hey guys, this is Jetto. So it's gonna be my first build guide. Uh, what we're looking at is Flicker Strike Berserker. Been playing Flicker Strike. This is going on to my third league. So I've spent 2 leagues in depth min-maxing and figuring out, ways to start with the build and ways to really go into the deep end game with it. We've looked at builds as high as like 200, almost 300 million DPS. Now, here's a few downsides just to, start things off. This, by all means, is a full-on glass cannon build. So, realistically, you're not going to be face tanking bosses and things of that nature, but the whole point of it is you need to survive long enough to not die while you're destroying whatever you're fighting, which is very achievable when you're looking at DPS in such high numbers, right? Another thing is this is not going to be a cheap build by any means whatsoever. So realistic starting cost of this build is going to be in the neighborhood of anywhere from 20 to 30 exalts, and it's going to be for on the low end of things. Certain bosses will be more difficult. For example, Cyrus, it's a little more difficult to control things in regards to dodging certain abilities of his and other things of that nature, just because you're a melee build. We're going to be needing to min-max a lot to make this character viable. Min-maxing in the terms of making sure you have enough crit multi, critical strike chance, and flat physical DPS. But all in all, if done right, this build can basically do any content outside of reflect maps and things like that. But we'll dive right into it. So let's go over the gear. To start things off, and this can really carry you all the way into the end game if you really want it to, is going to be your weapon, the Kitava's Feast. The 5-link variant right now, as of January 24, it's about 20 chaos for a 5-link, which is phenomenal. But I'd highly recommend that you go into the 6-link build, and mainly because it's only 6 exalts, and this weapon will carry you into endgame if you want it to. So the main reasons why a Kitava's Feast is actually so good is it's going to be a 7-link, because Sakura gems are supported by a level 25 melee splash. This is huge and very crucial. You need melee splash, whether it's in the support gem form or in the Kitava's Feast, because this is a single target ability by nature, and if you don't have melee splash, your clear speed is going to be atrociously bad. Another great thing about this axe, it has phenomenal DPS. It's about 540 if you're looking at a max quality with a decent roll. Also, it's really good for sustain. You don't need to worry about getting any mana leech or life leech. It has that built in, and the 1% that it gives you is more than enough. And on kill, you're going to get 5% of your life back. So it has enemies you hit or destroyed on kill. It's for certain enemies that have like death effects, like those ones that shoot out the spikes. That'll prevent that from happening, which is a little beneficial. But that's the weapon. So you can get away with any other axe, really. Something with a high physical damage rating. But you're going to want an axe. I'll go into that later when we get into the tree. And also, if you're not going to be running a Kitava's Feast, you need to sacrifice one of your gem links for a melee splash, which is going to hurt your DPS a little bit. So even though you might be able to find, a unique with higher DPS, the fact that this has melee splash built into it allows you to run another offensive gem, which at the end of the day is better than having an extra 100 to 200 DPS on a weapon. Next thing, the armor, Furl's Fur. I know this is gonna suck for a lot of people, but this is an absolutely required item. You cannot play Flicker Strike, at least the way I do, without Pharaoh's Flare. This is crucial to maintaining frenzy charges. Everyone knows if you've ever tried Flicker Strike, a lot of the issues you always have is maintaining frenzy charges, and Pharaoh's Fur simply eliminates that. It gives you reduced mana reservation of Aspect of the Cat, and every time you go into Cat's Stealth, which Aspect of the Cat switches between Cat's Agility, Cat's Stealth, every 4 or so seconds. Every time you switch to Cat's Stealth, you're going to gain your maximum frenzy and power charges. So, power charges are great because it's going to increase your crit chance, and frenzy charges is going to increase your attack speed and allow you to use Flicker Strike without needing to worry about running out of charges. And overall, the defenses you get, you're going to get armor and evasion rating from the base of the item. And if you're running this keystone right here, Iron Reflexes, it'll convert the evasion rating into armor. So really, this is a 2200 armor base, right? And on top of that, you're going to get 92 HP, which is pretty good. Let's go into gloves. The gloves, this is a fairly flexible spot, but the best in slot is going to be Hands of the High Templar. The reason Hands of the High Templar is so good is actually has built-in fire and lightning resistances up to 30%, and it has an insane amount of HP, percentage-wise. Obviously, mine are not rolled very well just because I'm prioritizing having the resistances as opposed to the maximum life right now because I don't want to throw a bunch of divines at it. It's still a little early in the league to be doing that, but yeah. Also, if you can't really afford the +1 maximum frenzy charges and attacks have 0.8 to critical strike chance, it's okay. Frenzy charges is like preferred, and then the critical strike chance is if you have the currency. If you want gloves like these that I have, they're going to run you anywhere from 10 to 15 exalts. And any like additional mods that you would want are going to just further raise the value of these gloves. So if you can help it, get something like I have now. If not, +1 maximum frenzy charges, and if not that, just get Hands of the High Templar. They're good gloves. And also, you can use a rare set of gloves if you already have one that's giving you the resistances and the HP that you need. So it shouldn't be a problem for you if you already have like a pair of gloves that you're using for Cyclone, whatever the case may be. Now, as for the belt, this one is also fairly flexible. I just chose to go with this because it's super cheap and it gives you a ton of damage. You have the nearby enemies are intimidated. That adds additional damage to those enemies. A global physical damage increase. And then also, it's going to give you pretty decent defenses. It's going to give you elemental resistances, life, and reduced extra damage from crits, which typically that would one-shot you if you don't have a stat like that. So the belt is super good defensively. It goes for a chaos or two if you want a well-rolled one, and overall, if you really want to, you have a good Stygian Vise, go ahead and use it. Anything will do. Just make sure your belt slot is helping you go towards those capped resistances, armor, etc. if you're not running this belt. Next, we'll go over the boots. I would recommend going with two-tone boots in order to get the implicit for the fire and cold resistances. These are really good boots. You don't need Tailwind and Elusive. They're definitely something that will help you, especially if you're running Delirious maps. The Tailwind obviously gives you more damage, and Elusive allows you to get dodge. So these are really good for defense if you can afford it. But Again, it's not important. Just make sure you have good rare boots that give you, high amount of HP, that have a good amount of movement speed built into them. You want at least 20% move speed. The reason being is we're not running a Quicksilver Flask, which I'll go into a little later as to why. But again, not a huge deal if you don't have Elusive and Tailwind. They're not important. What is important is that you have enough base movement speed and enough resistances and HP. Now, as for the helmet, this is probably the least consequential slot. The one thing I'm going to recommend that you don't do is run an Abyssus, because Abyssus is going to, yes, give you a lot of damage, but on the same note, it's going to make you die a lot more. And, what's the point of dying? You're not going to level up, and it's just going to be less fun. But also, Lab Enchant, definitely not important. It doesn't really even add that much damage. If you were to get like a 40% increased Flicker Strike damage, realistically, that's going to add maybe 500,000 DPS on your build if it's already at 30 million. So it's a very small percentage increase in DPS for the amount of extra investment it would cost for you to get a good helmet. So again, just make sure you're getting a helmet with high amounts of resistances and HP, and that's really the most important thing. Also, you want to make sure it's an armor base. So one like mine, or something like this. All that's good, but again, not important that you get the Lab Enchant or an influence item or anything like that. Just make sure it has high HP, high resistances, etc. As far as Amulet goes, you're going to be lacking in dexterity and intelligence on this build, just because of the gems that you're using. So try to find a amulet that gives you that. I don't currently have one, and I'm having to sacrifice, certain spots on my tree to get more dexterity and intelligence, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. For this slot, it's really important that you get, again, high HP. Crit multi is a plus. It's a pretty easy slot to get crit multi on. And later on in the league, if you're able to, get an amulet that has reduced mana reservation for Pride. That will go a long way in allowing you to carry or run 5 auras. Right now, I'm not able to run all the auras I have just because I don't have that mod, which I am working towards. But it's not a huge deal, right? So when it comes to the rings, this is another thing that one of your rings can literally be anything. For this one, I'm running this because I don't feel like it's too important and crucial to craft a better ring right now. It gives me my capped resistances, gives me some HP. That's all I really care about right now. The other ring is going to be an unset ring always. And here's why. You're going to want to craft level 20 Aspect of the Cat onto this ring. Besides Aspect of the Cat, it doesn't really matter what you get as long as it's, HP, resistances, whatever helps you go towards those capped resistances. Some nice to haves are flat physical damage to attacks, and also crit multi is pretty good. The Aspect of the Cat craft is going to be super simple. It's going to be a suffix. You need to just make sure that your unset ring has an open suffix slot. And if you go to PoE trade, the beast that you're going to need in order to craft this is going to be called Feral First of the Plains. And you can trade that. I think they're going for something like 15 chaos. I can double check. Yeah, so right now they're actually going for about 10 chaos for that specific craft. And it's a fairly easy ring to craft. Now, the reason that we get an unset ring is because we're going to put less duration into there. What that does is it actually reduces the amount of time that your Aspect of the Cat takes to switch between Cat's stealth and Cat's agility. If we go back to the Feral's Fur, This one will give you your maximum frenzy and power charges whenever you gain cat's stealth. So by putting a less duration, that means we're switching between cat's agility and cat's stealth more often. Also, aspect of the cat gives you a decent DPS boost, decent defenses, just nothing too crazy, but it's still an okay amount, and it's no cost for the mana reservation because of your Feral's Fur. And hence why I go back to this. This is going to ensure that you never ever run out of frenzy charges. Even if you're doing Cyrus, you don't need to worry about it. All right. I guess next we'll get into the flasks. This is going to be pretty straightforward. Here's what you need to make sure of. You need a panicked defined flask, a life flask, because you're going to be getting blown up certain areas of maps, and you want to make sure you can quickly regain your HP, and this is going to do exactly that. For the mana flask, this is very important. You are going to need an enduring mana flask, and the reason is, right now, at a 6 link, it costs me 68 mana per flicker strike attack, which means I run out of mana every single time I use this ability. But since this will never, stop until the full 4.9 seconds is over, it allows me to continuously not have to worry about running out of mana. Diamond Flask, pretty straightforward, gives you more crit chance. I'd recommend Experimenters because it's just going to increase the duration, less amount of times you need to, pop the flask. The Basalt Flask, this is also pretty important. I'd recommend Experimenters. I have a Fledulence. I just don't have the Experimenters yet. This is going to ensure that you're getting towards capped physical damage reduction. Lion's Roar also is going to be really good for defense, and it actually gives you a fair amount of damage as well. The knockback on enemies doesn't really matter because you're going to be standing on top of the enemies anyways, so don't worry too much about that. But these flasks, I'd say, are all super important. You absolutely need them. Lion's Roar is super cheap. You can pick them up for a few chaos. The only other thing I want to mention about flasks is you need to make sure that you at least have one that's staunching to stop any bleed. I usually put that on my life flask. You need a warding flask, and then one of heat so that you don't, get frozen and killed. The warding is just going to help you, if you get a temp chains map or something along those lines, it'll just deactivate the debuff, or the curse, sorry. But otherwise, you don't need to worry about much else. Now, here's why we're going to be doing Berserker. I've had many people ask me on my stream, why are we doing Berserker? Why not Slayer? Why not Champion? It's pretty simple. Berserker is a very easy and straightforward Ascendancy compared to what's out there. It's way more linear. I know that can be like a downside, but you have this aspect of Carnage, 40% more damage. That's, as simple as it gets. The downside there is you're going to be increasing the amount of damage you take by 10%, but it's really not much in the grand scheme of things, and this increases your DPS insanely. The other thing is that you have Rage. Rage is super awesome. It gives you increased attack speed, attack damage, and movement speed, which is super important because we're not really running a Quicksilver Flask. Also, you're going to get Rite of Ruin because it's going to triple the effects of the Rage. And then you're also going to get this. Since we're going so heavily into getting a high crit chance, this is going to just ensure that we're taking advantage of it because we're going to be adding 20 to 30 flat fizz to our attacks. If we crit recently, you get a flat crit multi of 25% and increased critical strike chance. So overall, super straightforward Ascendancy. It gives you exactly what this build is lacking: movement speed and damage. Now, otherwise in the tree, you really want to make sure that you're taking enough nodes to get close to 5,000 HP, and I would say a bare minimum is like 4,300 HP for this build. And anything less than that, you're gonna get one shot almost always. So always take the large HP nodes, take the crit nodes. So critical strike chance and crit multi are both super important. And then also you're going to be looking for accuracy rating. So those are the three main things to look out for when you're choosing things on your tree. So the reason we go for an axe is there's a lot of benefit to going with axe items on your tree. This will help you overwhelm physical damage reduction. This grants you impale chance, but that's nothing to do with axes. This gives you more impale chances for axes, which is also awesome, and impale effect. This will give you +5 maximum rage, which, rage gives us move speed, attack damage, attack speed. And we're just going to take two-handed weapon nodes and more crit chance, and more crit multi, and then also impale. I'd recommend going up here because, like, as it stands, you're using a lot of uniques in this build, so you don't have many rare slots to get your resistances. So this will give you 10% to all, and then you'll get 18 lightning and then 18 cold and a gem slot. So super beneficial to go this route. The jewels that you're going to want, Thread of Hope, super important. The Thread of Hope is not very expensive at all right now. If you want a large one with somewhat decent reduction in elemental resistances, 10% reduction being the lowest, you're going to be looking at anywhere from 70 chaos to about 100 chaos, just dependent on how good the roll is. But you do want a large ring. This is going to allow you to touch this, allow you to touch that, which gives you more intelligence, which you really need. Allow you to touch that, these two, all without having to path to them. So that saves you tons of points on your tree to put towards HP or something else. I'd recommend getting Call to Arms. It's going to allow you to just keep your Enduring Cry on your left mouse button as you move around, which will give you your maximum endurance charges as you go through the map. And I mean, otherwise, there aren't any other keystones I'd really recommend besides the Iron Reflexes, because again, this is giving you evasion rating, this is giving you evasion rating, and that's just going to turn into armor, make it overall a lot, you able to have capped physical damage reduction. As far as like regular jewels, I'm going to recommend that you guys go with crit multi and maximum life, and that's it. Like, if you can get a triple crit multi jewel, awesome. Those jewels are worth a ton. We're talking like upwards of 100 exalts. A double crit multi with some life is perfect though. As far as the Watcher's Eye goes, this is a fairly expensive one. This is probably going to run you, something like this is probably going to run you close to almost a mirror's worth. You want double damage while using Pride, and impales you inflict, lasts 2 additional hits while using Pride. So if you can only settle for one of these mods, I'd recommend going with the impales you inflict, lasts 2 additional hits, because that's going to give you more DPS overall. But if you don't have the currency for a Watcher's Eye right now, don't worry about it. It's not important. Cluster jewels, if you're going to get a cluster jewel, I'll recommend that you go with one that has vicious skewering, and feel the fight is not important at all, so don't even worry about that. But overall, jewels should be pretty straightforward. Just look for crit multi and life, and that should be about it. You can worry about the rest when you're min-maxing and, you know, you have the currency to do so. Let's see. So the next thing we'll go over is the gem links. This part I'm going to go a little bit in depth on. And if you guys go to my stream, twitch.tv/Jahedo, you'll be able to ask me any questions for anything I don't cover, but I should be covering mostly everything here. The first thing is your main 6 link. Obviously you want Flicker Strike, and it's super crucial that you have a maximum quality Flicker Strike. The reason is the quality actually increases your chance to gain frenzy charges on hit. So that in combination with your ferals is going to make sure you never run out of frenzy charges. The next thing is close combat. This gem is really good if you're playing a melee build, especially Flicker Strike, because every time you're attacking an enemy, you're literally right on top of them. So the closer you are, the more damage you do, hence why close combat is so good with this build. Brutality, super good gem, gives you a ton of DPS. It doesn't have to be awakened. I just happened to find this when I was doing an awakener or conquer. So if you don't have the currency, you don't get awakened brutality, just get the regular brutality support. Next thing is fortify. I was actually running melee physical damage. I decided to just run with fortify. It's a very little difference in DPS, but fortify is going to grant you the fortify buff, which helps your defenses a lot. Impale, obviously this is mainly a physical DPS impale build, so you're going to want to run impale support for the extra impale chance and for the impale effect. And then lastly, this is probably the most important one, you're going to want multi-strike. It doesn't have to be awakened multi-strike because this gem costs something like 30 to 35 exalts, but multi-strike is going to give you more damage overall because one attack is going to hit 3 times as opposed to just once. The next 6 link, oh well, actually let's go back to that. If you're only running a 5 link Kitava's Feast because you can't afford a 6 link, I'm going to recommend that you either drop the Fortify or you drop Brutality. Close Combat, Impale, and Multi-Strike are going to grant you more DPS than either one of these. So I'd recommend dropping either one. If you notice you're dying a lot, just drop Brutality. If you're doing just fine as far as defenses go, drop the Fortify and keep Brutality. So that's going to be how you determine that. So the other 6 link, if you can afford it, because I know the Feral's Furs are going for, right now, like the cheapest one you can find is like 9x, and that's not even a 6 link. And for a 6 link, you're looking at upwards of 15 exalts. But you're gonna want to run an Enlightened support gem connected to your auras, Pride, Dread Banner, Precision, Flesh and Stone, and Herald of Purity. So these are all going to aid you in getting more DPS besides Flesh and Stone. You can keep it in Blood Stance for more damage, but I highly recommend against that. If you keep it in Sand Stance, you're actually going to be able to blind nearby enemies, which in turn, increases the chance that you evade the attacks by 50%. So again, we're Glass Cannon. We need to do everything we can to not get hit, and this does exactly that if we're in Sand Stance. Another thing, Precision. Don't worry about leveling this up. I only have it at level 8, and that's because I'm close to having 100% hit chance as well as crit chance, so it's not super important for me. If you don't have the mana reservation available, just keep it at level 1. It's completely fine. It's not a big deal. Right now, I don't have, if we go back to the amulet, I don't have the Pride has reduced mana reservation, so I don't have enough mana to do Herald of Purity, or better yet, I don't have enough mana to run all the auras, so I'm dropping Herald of Purity. It provides the least amount of DPS out of the DPS gems, and yeah, until I get that amulet solved, this is the least consequential aura to drop. And really, never having Herald of Purity is still not a big deal, because at the end of the day, this is not going to make or break your build. So the next thing we'll look at is the cast when damage taken. So you're going to want to link two things. You're going to want Molten Shell and Blood Rage. Right now, my levels are mismatched with the cast when damage taken. I need to level this up. But cast when damage taken, whenever you take damage, it'll grant you a very substantial amount of armor and, you know, just overall bring up that physical damage reduction, because that's super important. Also, we have Blood Rage. Blood Rage grants you frenzy charges on kill and gives you life leech, gives you attack speed. It does hurt you in the sense that it's going to degen your HP, but if you're, you know, constantly attacking, it shouldn't really matter too much. So the rest of the gems are pretty straightforward. We have Berserk. This is going to be primarily used for bossing, and actually pretty much all the other ones as well, besides Enduring Cry, which I'll get to. Berserk is going to grant you a lot of damage reduction, a lot of attack speed, a lot of damage, and it doesn't last very long. So you're going to do this at the end of a map boss, on Cyrus, when you're nearing the end of a phase. If you just want to try to, you know, end that phase super quickly, you'll pop Berserk. It lasts, if you have full rage, it'll last you a good, you know, 5 to 10 seconds ish. But you can run it with like only 10 rage if you're just trying to quickly kill something, and also if you're about to die. The haste and grace, these are fairly different. You're not going to use the auras, you're going to be using the Val ability. So Val haste, super good again for bossing. You're going to pop this when you're trying to blow a boss up and make sure they die quickly. And then grace is going to be great for your defense. It's 33% chance to block, 33 chance to dodge attacks and spells. So this will be used for bossing yet again, just to avoid getting, you know, one shot. Enduring Cry, you're going to keep on your left mouse button, grants you HP, grants you endurance charges, goes towards physical damage reduction. And then the last gem, which actually not the last gem, but the next gem is less duration. I did mention it a little bit, but it's going to reduce the duration of Cat's stealth and Cat's agility in order to ensure that you're constantly maintaining those maximum frenzy charges. We have Leap Slam. It's going to be your primary movement ability. Super important that you link it with faster attacks, so that way you can Leap Slam more quickly. And then Ancestral Protector also benefits from the faster attacks, so we're going to also link it with that. Ancestral Protector is going to increase your attack speed as well. So what I would use this for is at the end of maps, killing bosses, killing Cyrus, etc. It's going to help you out with that when you can be near it and not have to repop the Ancestral Protector every single second. And a Portal Gem for quality of life. So overall, it is a fairly straightforward build in my opinion. It doesn't require too much knowledge, just because really all we're looking for is Impale Chance, physical damage, and dodge and armor. It's super simple. Don't overthink, you know, getting the little things like Tailwind, Elusive, you know, getting all the cool implicits for the Hands of the High Templar. Really, the three most important things for this build are your Katava's Feast, Pharaoh's Fur, and your Thread of Hope. Because Thread of Hope is just going to reduce the amount of points you have to use on your tree. if you're going to run this build on a low budget, you will not be able to do it without Feral's Fur. It's going to be a bad experience. It's not going to have a lot of damage without having to do some niche build that requires to do self-bleed or anything like that. So if anything, I'd recommend you save up to, you know, purchase the Feral's Fur. Right now they are a little expensive. They do get cheaper later in the league. And if you don't have enough currency for it yet, I'd recommend going Bladestorm. It has a really good transition into Flicker Strike. And, you know, someone on my stream asked me today, you know, a lot of people say that Cyclone gear is, you know, very similar to Flicker Strike gear. Yes, it is. But Flicker Strike has things that it absolutely needs. And that's Feral's Fur. And that's basically about it as far as needs. But you know, Katava's Feast is going to last you from the beginning of the league all the way to the end. The only other thing I would upgrade this for is like a god tier, you know, 7 link, 1000p DPS axe. I had one in Harvest, I had one in Heist. I do plan on making a, you know, insane axe a little later in the league when I have the currency to support it. But Katava's Feast is something you can still get away with way later on into the league. Hands of the High Templar, you know, as far as these go, you can buy ones that are not corrupt and try to corrupt them yourself, but more often than not, you're not going to get lucky. So I'd recommend, if you're going to get them, just save up and buy them, as opposed to wasting your time trying to trade for them. And then for your belt, ideally you want a Headhunter to be doing like 100% Delirious maps and Simulacrums. It's going to help you clear those in the sense of you don't have a lot of defenses as it currently stands, so 100% Delirious maps are going to probably kill you. And I wouldn't recommend doing that higher tier content without a Headhunter. If you're going to do things like Cyrus, regular mapping, without doing 100% Delirious, you don't need a Headhunter. I don't plan on getting one anytime soon, just because it's a very large cost this early in the league, and I just simply don't need it. Always make sure that, you know, you have your elemental resistances capped. Chaos resistance is not important. It really isn't. Make sure that you have as much armor as you can. Physical damage reduction, super important. Get dodge. Elusive is going to give you dodge chance. Your Valgrace is going to give you dodge chance. And then you have your Flesh and Stone Sand Stance to blind nearby enemies. So all of that together, along with your Fortify as well, is going to ensure that you're going to last long enough to kill your enemy before they kill you. Please do check out my stream. I'm constantly working on min-maxing my build. Right now I'm at about 35-ish million DPS. Getting on up there, but I still have a ways to go. So what I'll do for now, we'll go ahead and take care of this Conqueror, and I believe it's the Warlord, and just to, you know, showcase what things look like right now. And please do stop by the stream if you have any other questions.